Passion, a verb. In your heart, every thought. Passion, a verb. Passion, a verb. In your heart, every thought, word or deed can bring about the miracle. Compassion and loving kindness invisible. Without the limit, we have destroyed. Our Mother Earth in the same way, but the bacteria would be the virus that can destroy the human body. Take care of each other for our environment beyond the belief that something can be lost and there's nothing to lose, but there's truth. You don't have a life. You're one for the consciousness that pervades that entire universe that takes temporary for the experience of the satin, for the stone, for the blade of grass, that you have an animal, for the person, for the star, for the galaxy. You can have a sense of deep find of what you already know. In attempt, with a sin, insinuating the intermittent food for thought. We waited, understood, wait, was lost, be found. I like gardens of Eden only apply to the apple beast and the pollinate the innate interpretation without fulfilling your spirit, the mystical timelines and timeouts. Truth and historical oracles and history, the virgin for the nutrition, the alphabetic for the alpha, for the omegas and alpha, the omens of this will be created, rich, poor, quality, poetry. Symbolizing yourself for the having heart for the vows. Blessed the dying sanctuary inspires after the spirit to make the salam salat alone for the not allowed to alone, for the offering for the benevolence of your violence and not criminally act. Be the temple of this template for the Eden, not for the esoteric, for the bestow, for the death for the beals, and the righteousness, and to illustrate that for the fair better. With the man for the manipulation of the population to control for the lies, and surely outside the lines of space and time, but who can find and watch it? Tell the time to why to stop to watch the words and not to find and digest the gestures. Just in case of your heart burns, the world to play the biggest heart for the plate, the bomb to that for the well for the belt. Find a foul play for the plagiarists and the kingship for the imperializing, not combine the NATO for the ego, the judge that days for the OJs. OJs and Bluebird for the tongue play. Rest behind the bars, 369s. Institution line for the Zulu. Nationalities for the analomies. Maybe the converter to deity for the contraction. You can find it immaculate and enough for the reality. Really relocated for the re-estimate yourself for the estimate. Or estate for the gates of the temple for the pinot. You can find a gland for the penetrator for the label enough for the defender of your galaxy. Fall at the fantasy, impregnate yourself for the vacancy, air to define the fancy, the royalty for the salty currency, the enough for the dependence to depend on, as and not to find the donkey to depend on. You too, and us not to find REM for this, the remedies for the remaining, maintaining for the suntan, for the oil of dry bones, and the lucid conclusion to be the deterrent for the never determined and ignorant enough of the mind. Deterrent. It was said the rent was too high for the shove that joint for the ligament for the dimension of management. I can find a dimension for the commencing yourself for the fencing your borders of your grids of religion and relying upon those in intelligence for the obesity for the obedience and you can find the allegiant. Or that for the allegiance, for the alignment, for the atonement, for the mono, monopolize the capital punishment, for the poverty, for the poets, to seat yourself for the seed in the blind. Jesus will be the light, as he is and always will be for the Jesus fish that swims that and what in gravity, for the provides the breath of that define and food for the 2/3 of the world, for the this to be the light for the shines within us, of the mercury behind the harmful, for the enough for the taking the 2 months of that for the mercury, the sun of the maintaining the orbit for the snap of the real zone, and your gravitational pull for the source of yet to seem to cause. In effect, the earth is the knife for the orbit for the stage, to the sun, the staff for the sword, for the lower, for the water, for the being, the star dust of the creator, for the what it is of the solar system, for you have that to give it what you want. How humane and humanity and enough for the manage the ages, that the light to shine for the side, that for the projects of your son, and most of that for the high for the nothing, and the higher than enough for the get it up on it for the heaven and enlightening yourself for the path of Christ consciousness. Your words come together for the word to be spoken and breathe that for the multiple options of receiving yourself for the sea. Horizons to limitations to imitate no tongues and find the nations or rations and find a stereotype of your stereos and the Father omnipresent for this would be the star that was born for you to be grateful for the giving for the before you have the grace to eat it for you fed the forgiven forgave that for the not to be forgotten but he gave that for himself for the begotten to receive the believer the faith and not the sight that you to have the eyes and not to be seen for the felt being touched that for the touch without the feeling for the back of paraplegic for the almighty for the one child for the hand to find and giving the sacrifice for you the him for the child for the this to be the father for the son for the manifestation your crucifixion divine and holy non-perishable Trinity for the 369 the trip around the sun for the sun has had the light the solar system for the immaculate conception to be It's okay, silly people, for the whites are gonna get over your enslavement for your 400 years. It's over for the stranger, the neighbor that you didn't find enough for the males to manipulate your insubordination. You were according to the wireless and tangled to the angle. I obtain your overall obtuse straightening for the lighting, for the outshine yourself, for the grounding, for the energy, for the commonly wed yourself, for the abiding what you can find and bright, the groom to the hair, for the air, upon your no condition, for the pure love. You offer comes that for the unconditional, for the dark alleys to be allowed, for the dilated, for the duality, for the see-through, for the not know it, and eyes to make the vows and altars are okay. God promised to make you self for the made, for the ingredients and the grievance and the benevolence, for the divine behavior, the death to be a soul, lent you divine Easter, Passover, for the assistant, for the pacifist. Insinuated for the fullness of the vast, and you can find that fast instead of breaking your breakfast and slowly uplifting your ploy. I plow through the muddy waters and quicksand. Stick to the results in the soul, their face for the soul, for the body, for the right of your way, for the representing your repentance, and for the repeated acts that you do no good for the good, for nothing, for the giving, not for the forgiveness, and more than less, would you feel the free to choose to find a free will for the safe and salvage. Human and God for this life to be given, not to be forgotten, but begotten too.
Tell me, face me entirely. Tell face me entirely.
In attempt, split the sin, insinuating the interment of food for thought. We waited, understood, wait, was lost, be found. I like gardens of Eden only apply to the apple beast and pollinate the innate interpretation without fulfilling your spirit in mystical timelines and timeouts. Truth and historical oracles and history divergent for the nutrition, the alphabetic for the alpha, for the omegas and alpha, the ovens of this to be created, rich, poor, quality, poetry. Symbolizing yourself with the having the heart for the vows. Blessed to dine the sanctuary inspires after the spirit to make salam salat alone for the not a lot to loan for the offering for the benevolence in your violence and not criminally act. Be the temple of the template for the ethan, not for the esoteric, for the bestow, for the death of the beals and the righteousness and the illustrate that for the fair better. Man for the manipulation of the population to control the lies and truly outside the lines of space and time, but who can find and watch until the time they want to stop to watch the words and that to find and digest the gestures. Just in case of your heart burns the world to play the biggest heart for the play, the bomb for that for the well for the belt. Find a foul play for the patriots and the kingship for the imperializing, not the mind and NATO for the ego, the judge that days for the OJs and Bluebird for the tone play. Rest behind the bars, 369s. Institution alive for the Zulu. Nationalities for the analogies. Maybe the converter to deity for the contraction. You can find it immaculate and enough for the reality of really relocated for the re-estimate yourself for the estimate. Or estate for the gates of the temple for the Pinot. You can find a gland for the penetrator for the label of enough for the defender of your galaxy. Fall at the fantasy, impregnate yourself with the vacancy, air to define the fancy, the royalty for the salty currency, the enough for the dependence to depend that as and not to find the donkey to depend on. You too, and also not to find REM for this, the remedies for the remaining, maintaining for the suntan for the oil, the dry bones and the illusion conclusion to be the deterred, but the never determined and ignorant enough of the deterrent. You said the ramp was too high to shove that joint for the ligament for the mention of management. I can find the dimension for the condensing yourself for the fixing your borders of your rich religion and relying upon those intelligence for the obesity for the obedience and your confining allegiance. Or an after allegiance for the alignment for the atonement for the monuments. Monopolize the capital punishment for the poverty for the poets and see yourself for the seed in the blind. Jesus will. As he is, so always will be for Jesus fish. He swims that what the gravity for the provides the breath without the bond. Food for the 2/3 of the world, for this to be the light that shines within us, of the mercury behind the heart, for enough taking it too much of that for the Mercury. The sun have been maintaining the orbit for the snap of the rules open. Your gravitational pull for the source that yet to seem to call. In effect, the earth is a knot for the orbit for the stage, the sun is that for the sword for the loud, for the water for the being, the stardust for the creator, for what it is to the citizens, for you have that to give it what you want. Now, humane and humanity is enough to manage the ages out the light to shine for the side, that for the projects of your sons, and most of that for the iron enough for the good of the one, and for the heaven and light, and yourself for the path of Christ consciousness. Words come together for the word to be spoken and breathe, that for the multiple options of receiving yourself for the seed. Horizon to limitations to imitate no tongue, and finding nations or rations, and finding stereotypes of stereos, and look to God the Father omnipresent, for this will be the star that was born for you to be grateful for the giver, for the before you have the grace to eat it for. He fed the forgiven, forgave that for not to be forgotten, but he gave that for himself, for the begotten to receive the believer, the faith and not the sight, the need to have the eyes and not to be seen for the felt. Being touched, that for the touch without the feeling, for the back, the paraplegic, for the almighty, for the one child, for the kind, the fine, and giving the sacrifice, for you, the him, for the child, for this to be the father, for the son, for the manifestation, for the crucifixion, the final hope. Non-perishable. Trinity for the 369, the triple around the sun, for the sun has had the light, the soul, the sister, for the immaculate conception to be. Okay, silly people for the whites. Gonna get over your enslavement for your 400 years. It's over for the stranger, the neighbor, the you didn't find the nail, for the males that manipulate your insubordination. You with according to the wireless entangled to the angle. I obtain your overall I2 straightening for the lighting, for the outshine yourself, for the grounding, for the energy of the commonly wedge yourself, for the abiding what you can find and bright, the group to the hair, for the air, the upon no condition, for the pure love. You often comes that for the unconditional, for the dark alleys to be allowed, for the dilated, for the duality, for the see-through, for the not knowing, and eyes to make the vows of altars are okay. God promised to make you self made for the ingredients and the grievance and the benefits, for the divine behavior, the back will be so late you find Easter, Passover, for the assistant, for the pacifist. Insinuated for the fullness of the vast, and you can find that fast instead of breaking your breakfast and slowly uplifting your ploy. I plow through the muddy waters and quicksand. Sick with the results in this whole your face with the solely for the body, for the right of your way, for the representing your repentance, for the repeated action. You do no good for the good, for nothing, for the giving, not for the goodness, and more than less, but you feel free to choose to find a free will for the safe and salvage. Human to God for this life to be given, not to be forgotten, but begotten too.
Compassion, a verb. In your heart, every thought, word or deed can bring about the miracle. Compassion and loving kindness invisible. Without the limit, we have destroyed. Mother Earth in the same way, but the bacteria be the virus that can destroy the human body. Take care of each other for our environment beyond the belief that something can be lost and there's nothing to lose if there's truth. You don't have a life and you're one for the consciousness that pervades that entire universe that takes temporary for the experience of the sap, for the stone, for the blade of grass, and you have an animal for the person of a straw, for the galaxy. You can have a sense of deep to find out what you already know. What you are. And I'm getting older for more than the tendency to look for the people who live the kindness and the tolerance, for the compassion and the gentle ways of looking at things. There's an interhedence and this fire and a flower between that bees. There are no flowers, there are no bees, and where there's no bees, there's no flowers, and there's actually an organism for the same way, for the everything you naturally depends upon everything else, and finding what your reality is, and find a real small daily action. There can be no deceit in search of the truth. The fires and suffer become light of consciousness, and each one of us has their own unique flaws, and we're all crackpots, and this the cracks and that the flaws, and make our lives of this together. It's so very interesting and rewarding for you need to take the person for what they are and looking for the good in them. Remember to appreciate the different people in your life, calming us to the rest. The resting is a precondition for the healing in which animals and forests get wounded. They find a place to lie down and rest completely for the many days. They don't think about food or anything else, and they just want to rest and just to find a healing for the need for the human pack. We get sick enough with the worry. Look for doctors and medicine, but we don't stop. We even go to beaches and mountains vacations, but you don't rest. Have to come back home for tired than we were before, for having to learn to rest. This is lying down, it's the only position to rest. The silence is never the end of the speech, or vocal the speech, I've stressed that other than sound. Sound is that one intimate for the contact with the surroundings, and language is the only medium for communicating your one thought with another. Silence is ever speaking between that things and pain and pleasure for the flows. So it might refuse to flow with get stuck in the banks of time of poverty, lost in the pit of the find the deepest religion where you are. Those who need eternal peace within you. Difficult to live with yourself from. Seek peace in one spread, do not experience that. Peace are you kind for yourself in the sun's eyes. Find essential deep transformation, balance, practice, and consecration. Reflected like a still water from reflect things as they are. The calm every silence helps us to see more clearly. Catch yourself smiling, placing your head still with a smile for the hands of the child. Content for your mind to see for yourself, that's not divided being the water. Half the time you think you're thinking the action. You got to do not. Let the train not to have that. Not to be luxury. People say time is like time is life. It's being quiet enough to make the basic. It's not that simple. Like that, we should live, we should find freedom from the innocence, with the nation, fresh and quiet, your thirst, and the nation, set life, and the rhythm, false nation. What's the line, both sides, and yourself, and emotion. Here's to love like that, love, life itself, is not the end, it's love, you know, find safe itself, in spite of the true love, that's all for that, that's the need of it, that's the I know it's God's need for the word of God. It's reality is God. That's a beautiful thing that has my control. Control and everyone else that I call God. It's a difference in between the spirit and this is all that the same.
Mother Earth in the same way as the bacteria and viruses destroy the human body.
Take care of each other for our environment beyond the belief that something can be lost and there's nothing to lose if there's truth. You don't have a life. You don't want the consciousness that pervades that entire universe. It takes temporary for the experience to sat with the stone with the blade of grass, and you have an animal for the person with the straw for the galaxy. You can have a sensitive view combining what you already know. But you are not getting older for more than tendency to look for the people who live the kindness and the tolerance and the compassion and the gentle ways of looking at things. As you enter Eden, it's the fire and the flower between that view. There are no flowers, there are no bees, and where there's no bees, there's no flowers, and there's actually an organism in the same way. For everything you naturally depends upon everything else, and finding what your reality is, and finding real small daily action. There can be no deceit in searching for truth. Fires and stuff will become light of consciousness, and each one of us has their own unique flaws. We're all cracked pots, and this the cracks that the flaws and make lives of this together. It's so very interesting to be rewarded, but you need to take the person and what they are and look for the good in them. Remember to appreciate the different people in your life, calming us to the rest. The rest is a condition for the healing in which animals of course get warm. They find a place to lie down and rest completely for the many days. They don't think about food or anything else, and they just want to rest and just to find a healing for the need for the human pack. If you get sick enough of the worry, look for doctors and medicine, but they don't stop. You even go to beaches and mountains vacation, but you don't rest. You have to come back home for tired than before. If it happened to learn to rest, just lying down is the only position of resting. The silence is never the end of the speech. We're vocal to speech and obstrust that other silence. Silence that one intimate for the contact with the surroundings and language is the only medium communicating your one thought with another. Silence is ever speaking between that banks of pain and pleasure. So when the mind refuses to flow with life, it gets stuck in the banks and it becomes a problem. The thoughts of the find the deepest nature of who you are. Ocean that you turn to peace within you. Difficulty with you suffer from. Seek peace elsewhere, do not experience that. But your peace are incarnated yourself with the self-violence. Occupying the sense of deep transformation allows you to practice the transformation. Effective like a still water to reflect things as they are. The calming and silence and helps us to see more clearly and further for the deeper content of yourself and the surroundings. There you catch yourself smiling, voice in your head as though with a smile for the antics of the child, for the mean that you no longer for the content for your mind is serious enough in the sense for yourself and does not divine and big on you. Half the time you think you're thinking, you're actually listening. Whether believing in God or do not believe in, depending on what the condition for the year, you believe that for the communist who believes in no God, for this is different. So whether you train and lead, you train not to, whether you have that not to breathe the luxury. People say there's time and the money for the much more than the money for the time itself, and this is life. Simple practice is simply being quiet enough for the regular basic and profoundly be healing and enough to stop that sitting in a good way to focus on your mind, breathing and nothing else. In fact, that for the wish of liberation to find the freedom for the bandage is real enough for the nature to freshly acquire yourself so the necessary I can find a rid from false emotions. What's it bound for the silence to heal yourself and nourish you? No, it appears to be love for like that, for the love, but really for the love.